Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a powerful king named King Umezo, ruler of the Igbo land. For 20 years, King Umezo had ruled the village of Umuoma, and his reign continued to this day. During these years, he had married 13 wives and fathered 20 children. King Umezo possessed a grand house, vast lands, and immense wealth, but he also harbored a dark secret, his reliance on black magic to protect himself and his people. This magic required him to marry young virgins to maintain his powers. When Neoma passed by, she greeted the king by bowing down. The king, unable to control his emotions, was already falling for Neoma and wished to have her by any means. When Neoma passed by after greeting the king was still lost in thought. He commanded the guards to follow the girl and find out every detail about her. The guards followed Neoma, unaware of her family's history. At the palace, the king was lost in thought, thinking about Neoma, when the guard entered and reported that the girl's family was banned from the kingdom years ago. The king, undeterred, ordered the guard to take him to their dwelling. When they arrived, the small village was afraid, gathering in fear to know why the great king of Umuoma had come to their village. King Umezo went straight to the point, telling them he loved the daughter Neoma and wanted to make her his wife. Neoma's parents rejected the proposal, but not in front of the king. That night, the king couldn't sleep, thinking about Neoma all night. Meanwhile, Neoma was told that the king sought her hand in marriage, and she rejected it, saying she couldn't marry an old man. Her family supported her opinion and happiness. One evening, Neoma was in the bush fetching firewood when she heard a sweet voice behind her. "Good evening, my beautiful queen." She turned to see King Umezo, and in panic, she greeted him while bowing down. The king held her hand to stand up, and Neoma stood up, looking at the floor. But the king's voice was so sweet and attractive, and he looked young and charming. Neoma, though brave, refused to be carried away by his physical looks. She boldly asked the king, "Your Highness, how may I help you?" The king, in a joyful tone, answered, "Will you grant my wish?" Neoma said yes, but only if he would grant hers. The king said, "No problem, I will grant all your wishes, just marry me and be my queen." Neoma smiled and asked him, "Is that all?" The king said yes, "Say anything, and I will do it for you." Neoma, still in fear but with courage, told the king that he must not marry another wife after her and that she wanted him to approve their little village as a separate village, naming it after her father's name and making her father the king of their own village in the bush. The king accepted the offer with joy. Neoma was overjoyed in her heart and told the king to come with his people, as she was ready to accept his proposal publicly. The king returned home happily, and Neoma shared everything with her parents. Although her mother was initially unhappy with the idea, Neoma convinced them that she truly loved the king and wanted to marry him. Her mother, who understood the feeling of falling in love, supported her and reasoned with her father. The next day, the great king of Umuoma village came with his entourage to Neoma's father's house to ask for her hand in marriage. Neoma accepted, and everyone was happy except her father, who hid his displeasure. Neoma went home with her husband, the king, who was overjoyed and overwhelmed with happiness. When Neoma arrived at the palace, the king's wives came out to greet her, although some didn't due to jealousy. Neoma was taken to her room, and their marriage became the talk of the whole village and neighboring villages, as Neoma was a beautiful and young bride for the king. The king spent quality time with Neoma, and the next day, they demolished the deep forest in Neoma's father's village and constructed many buildings. They named the village Needy Village, after Neoma's father's name, and made him the king of the village. 6 years later, Neoma had 3 adorable children, a girl and 2 boys. She lived happily ever after with her husband and children, and succeeded in transforming the king into a better person. Neoma made great strides and progressed, and the king fulfilled all his promises.